For those, please turn on your microphone when speaking, and when participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please complete the request to speak form. MAG staff can assist with any questions you may have. And if you park in the garage, parking validators are available on the information table in the hallway. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of the members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the Regional Council, I will go down the list of alphabetically. Please unmute and indicate if you are present. Mayor Beck, Mayor Bien-Willner, Mayor Crane.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Daniels.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego.
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Galvin. Mayor Giles.
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Goodman. Mayor Hall.
Here.
Thank you. Chair Hartke.
Here.
Thank you. President Javier. Mayor Hermosillo. Mayor LaVault.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Governor Roe Lewis. Jackie Mack. Mayor Molina.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Morris.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Osborne. Mayor Ortega.
Present.
Thank you. President Patia.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Pizzillo.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Schultz.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Sykes.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Walter. Mayor Wires.
Present and accounted for.
Thank you. Mayor Weiss.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Wheatley. Mayor Wilson.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Woods.
Barely here.
Thank you.
Coming in hot.
Is there anyone that I missed? Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you so much. Would you all please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Regional Council. Next on our agenda is the call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda. Informational items are items on the agenda for discussion, but not for action. 15 minutes will have been provided for the call to the audience. And please note that we have a new podium location adjacent to the audience seating area from which members of the public are invited to provide their comments. So Diane Barker, you get fewer steps in this morning, and I understand that you are ready to speak. You have up to 3 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mayor Hartke. New chairman here at the mayor's, and I am Diane Barker. I consider myself happy to be here and to be able to be public speaking. This is a topic that has generated a lot of interest, open meetings law. And, since the surprise incident, which you're probably not surprised to hear, now it's all out. But I think it's going to be better because it will more or less define and bring to the instance all of the freedoms that are involved for both sides, the government who is offering that, and actually open meeting laws to be so that our government can hear the concerns of our citizens and hopefully would take them to heart and resolve them. And so it shouldn't be a thing of you against us and so forth. And I do appreciate if I would happen to, I don't do it at MAG. I learned my lesson a long time ago doing cartwheels. But if we get either rambunctious or if we go over our time, if you would, your time is up. Your time is up. Mr. Ryan used to say, all they want to know is your time is up, Mr. Ryan, the things that he was talking about. And this man was educated, and I'm often wondering the things he talked about then are things we're trying to resolve today, like the interchanges off of the 51 out in the 101. We know when we build roads, they become obsolete by the time they're put into action. And he was all about the timings of making that transition. And I'm wondering, I call your attention to that, to look into that with ADOT to see if we have the proper timings in the building of anything new we do and what we can do to adjust that to move our traffic. Some of you know that I believe in multimodal transportation, and I did go to the Board of Supervisors today, and I was in opposition for an environmental thing. I come from soil conservationists. And the thing about it is I was in opposition for recycling. You know why? Well, first of all, there's not a mandate in Arizona for it. And we haven't had enough education for people to be putting the right things in. In 2018, we had jam ups in this recycling. Then China was the biggest buyer of our waste, but we wouldn't import their products back. And so now the county is having to pay a bigger price because the market's not paying with the city of Phoenix. And so Bill Gates said, I think you need to talk to City of Phoenix. When I left the podium, I says, I'm headed over to the city council. So now I'm hitting you today, and I am in compliance.
Thank you, Ms. Barker.
Yeah.
MAG also provides the opportunities for members of the public to submit written comments on the MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting have been shared with the committee members in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal meeting minutes. Staff, did we receive any online written comments for the call to the audience?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we have received no written comments today for the call to the audience or any other item on today's agenda.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is item number 4. Item numbers 4A through D are information only. Does any member of the committee have questions or request a presentation at this time? Hearing none. The next item on the agenda is item number 5, approval of the consent agenda. So prior to approval of the consent agenda, there is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items on the consent agenda. We've also, did Ms. Barker also want to speak on the consent agenda? Is that my understanding? Very good. Again, we've shortened your commute to the podium.
You know, whatever the distance is, I'm in for the long game. And Banner can let you know I passed my heart test. They were a little afraid because I had low heart rate, there. But I have the same heart rate as Michael Phelps. So they said that you can have a low heart rate if you're a child or you're fit. So anyway, I'm hoping on that. But you know what? I will be more brief on this. I want to be in support of the minutes. I think that Andrea does an excellent job. She basically says maybe she should get up here and speak for me. She could probably say more in fewer words than what I say to you. So thank you on that. And the environmental justice, Amy did a tremendous, I brought this environmental justice to Meg in regards to the civil rights law too. is because I was shut out of a meeting with the city of Phoenix. And then I started thinking, some federal government, I know how to file. I thought I'll just go and talk with them. And then I started reading this and I just said, the way that I see it, we have a lot of contractors into government and we people, our access is you. And so what we want things done, we want you to control the contractors. And maybe some of you do, but the way that I saw it, they weren't, because these contractors did a quid pro quo and they only had it for the governor, and the public was put out. Well, I think that this, but if you look at the paper, it looks like Meg has spent some time on that. And so, freedom of access to our government.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. I understand that as well. We have no additional written comments on this as well, correct?
That is correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. So with consent agenda, is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 5A through 5G?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion.
All right, we'll go with Mayor Weiss, and I heard it. I didn't hear a second here. I heard, who's that over here? All right, second with Mayor Osborne. For those who are participating in the meeting online, take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. For those who cannot do so or who do not want to turn on their cameras because they're making us jealous of great locations of where they are, staff will conduct a roll call vote. So staff will only call on virtual participants who did not turn on their cameras. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote so that staff can count the people's names whose cameras are not on. Can I have a voice vote in the room and those online? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Staff, can you take a roll call of members participating virtually if anyone did not turn on their cameras?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, when I call your name, please indicate how you vote. Mayor Molina?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Great, very good. Moving off the consent agenda, our next item is item number 6, honoring October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This is on our agenda for approval. Amy St. Peters, Assistant Executive Director, will introduce the item. Joining Amy is Peggy Billstrom, First Chair and Chandler resident, and Dolores D.C. Ernst, the current chair, as well as another Chandler resident and Chandler council member and vice chair of this committee, Councilmember Christine Ellis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the MAG Regional Council. It's a pleasure to be before you today. The purpose of this presentation will be to seek your approval of the resolution in support of October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, as well as to celebrate the 25-year anniversary of the MAG Regional Domestic Violence Council. Very pleased today to be joined by my 3 esteemed colleagues here. And at this time, I'd like to invite up our Vice Chair and Councilmember Ellis with the City of Chandler. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Councilmember Christine Ellis. I am so honored to be here before you this morning. This is the 25th anniversary of MAG, Regional Domestic Violence Council. It is an honor, as I said, to serve as vice chair for an organization that works to make communities safer and more aware of domestic violence. I'm sure you heard my accent, so you're probably asking where I'm from. I am originally from Haiti. And I have been a member of this council for the last 5 years, as Mayor Hartke has appointed me on it. As we celebrate the 25th years of progress, I want to extend my gratitude to Ms. Peggy Billstrom, the first chair of the Regional Domestic Violence Council, for laying the foundation for the work we continue today. And to all our members and partners, thank you for your dedication and commitment. We are the primary coordinating body for issuing related so many issues related to domestic violence in our region. Together, we stand united with one goal: to eradicate domestic violence and ensure the safety of the people in our community. Our mission is simple. It is to work hard, hand in hand with each other and those in our community to implement the recommendations set forth in the Regional Domestic Violence Plan. This plan is a roadmap to a future free from violence, a future where every individual has the right to live with dignity and free from fear. Our task is to coordinate efforts, raise awareness, improve services, and most importantly, prevent domestic violence here where it begins. We have made great strides in this mission. I know you will hear from our chair right after me, and she will have some key areas in which we have made some very well improvement. This accomplishment will not be possible without the deep level of collaboration that exists across members and organizations. Having partners with wide range expertise, whether it's law enforcement, advocates, or shelter providers, strengthen our ability to tackle domestic violence from every angle. We cannot do this alone. And so I'm before you today asking for all your participation with this work that we are doing together to build a future where every individual has the right to live free from violence, fear, and abuse. Here to another 25 years of progress, protection, and partnership. Together, we can and we will create a safer tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and council members and the wonderful Executive Director, Ed Zucker. I don't know how you all were so blessed with that, but. And yes, Mayor, I am a resident of Chandler, but I have to tell you,
Uh-oh.
my heart is Phoenix.
Ugh.
I was blessed to serve the city of Phoenix from 1994 to 2008. And as I was driving down to work today, I saw light rail, and light rail was right next to me. And I just remember how many regional councils meetings I came to talk about the first proposition, then, well, actually 97, and then Transit 2000 and 2004. And I was just reminded of what wonderful things happen when people come together. And so I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for the work you put into MAG, because I know that the hours are long sometimes, but it's worth it. And I also think at a time when we see so much division in our country, it's pretty amazing to see how people can come together from other cities to bring the best for our state. And I appreciate that with y'all. It was a horrible incident 25 years ago that kind of brought the issue of domestic violence to our doorstep in Phoenix. And a mom, her name was Laura Munoz, and she had been trying to find shelter, and she was unable to find shelter. She went from shelter to shelter to shelter. She was unable to find it. She came home, and her partner killed her in front of her children, and her children witnessed this. And I remember thinking, as a public servant, the very first thing, for those of you campaigning, I know you'll appreciate this, but the very first thing that we would say is public safety is the most important. Nothing is more important than public safety. And then you have your other issues. Well, if we weren't addressing domestic violence, we really couldn't be addressing public safety, because at that time, and I don't know if it still is today, but it was the number one reason women were murdered in the United States. It was the most dangerous call a police officer will go out on and ask them about it. Things are crazy. And so by coming together, we wanted to see, we took an inventory and we wanted to see what needed to be done. And Amy did an incredible job. Is this in packets? It's in your packets. It has a timeline of things that were done. But what we did is we came together all of us in the county, and decided what we needed. And so we came together. One thing was one bed, one life. We knew we needed more beds. So nonprofits who had to be a part of this as well came together and said, you know what, we'll forgo our funding for you guys because we need more beds in this area. And they came together and they did that not once, but over and over and over again, whether it was a family advocacy center, whether it was for more beds. And it was really amazing to see how they were willing to share their grants. The one thing I would ask you today is, we know this hasn't gone away. We might not be hearing as much about it, but I guarantee you, whether it's orders of protection, whether it's when you're getting served, whether it's a place to live, whether it is unintended consequences like crime-free multi-housing. I remember how thrilled I was with crime-free multi-housing, and we pushed that forward, never knowing that that might limit, that might keep a woman and her children from being able to rent an apartment because her husband beat her in that apartment. And so that went down on her record as well. But the only way you find out is worrying this. And so I would encourage you to do that. And I would also really encourage you to fund it. And I know people probably come up here all the time asking for funding, but if we're truly concerned with public safety, I think that that has to be a part of the equation. Thank you. God bless you guys. And thank you so much for the work you do.
And the mayor of Phoenix appreciates your continued allegiance and affection to the greater Phoenix area.
Yes, we would like to continue to claim you.
Well, thank you guys for the opportunity to speak before you today. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Vice Chair. I appreciate you, and Aiden, of course, always. Today I want to briefly talk about where we were and where we're going. So it has been truly inspiring to spend time with Peggy and learn the work that was done 25 years ago up to today, and to watch what has been going on. In the early works, they established those strong foundations that Peggy had just mentioned, and they made progress. Our system is not as fragmented and siloed as it was 25 years ago. And thanks to council initiatives, such as the regional misdemeanor domestic violence model, law enforcement is now arresting and prosecuting abusers using practices, making our system more efficient and effective. When the model first started, law enforcement agencies across Maricopa County had to use the protocol to overhaul what they were doing and how they approach domestic violence. Years later, this model is still making a difference in the ability to hold abusers accountable through the criminal justice system. In projects like this model and others, we are looking for ways that we can leverage the best of what we know today to do more for the survivors and to hold abusers accountable. This is not always a straightforward task. We have to look for opportunities where we can safely engage survivors and connect them with services as quickly as possible. For this reason, we developed an evidence-based screening questions for healthcare providers. Often survivors may not seek medical attention for themselves, but they will for their children. Working with pediatricians, we were able to equip them with the most effective ways to screen abuse when the abuser was not present. We also provided resources so pediatricians could connect the families to help right away. So I am laughing because I'm having a hot flash. Oh, no. It's fun being old. It's so fun. Anyways, the threat is real, not just of hot flashes, but domestic violence. By the time this meeting ends, 5 more women and girls in this country will have been killed by someone in their family. Every minute, 20 more women are abused. We do not have time to lose. We've already lost so many lives to abuse. Today, we are asking for your continued dedication in addressing domestic violence together. Over the last 25 years, we have developed effective tools. In the next 25 years, we will remain committed to this work and continuing to positively impact the lives of those suffering from domestic violence. Now is the time to consider how we might undertake this work differently. The council will consider future strategic directives as part of the Regional Human Services Assessment underway. On October 3rd, we will honor the 25-year anniversary during the Regional Domestic Violence Council meeting. We invite you all to come to that meeting and mark the milestone with us. We also invite you to raise awareness of what your residents are doing we also invite you to raise awareness with your residents about domestic violence. This can be done in a number of ways, including lighting your buildings and other facilities purple, hosting public events, and sharing stories. The online form to collect this information for the regional event calendar is available on the MEG website. Please send your stories, photos, events, and information. If we can do anything to support your efforts, please let us know here at MAG, and we'll send you Amy. We stand ready to partner with you. Amy does as well. And we appreciate your time. Amy, I'll turn it back over to you. By the way, great job.
Thank you very much to Peggy, Councilmember Ellis, and DC. We're blessed with talented partners throughout the entire region, and we count you among those. So thank you so much for your continuing support. Working together, we can continue to strengthen the regional response to domestic violence and keep more people safe and hold more people accountable. For your action today, then, for your consideration is this resolution of support. This has been recommended for approval by the MAG Management Committee and by the MAG Regional Domestic Violence Council. After your vote today, hoping it's a positive one, we will send the resolution out with a press release, the photo of all of you wearing purple, and the 25-year timeline that was referenced just earlier, and that is at your places right now. So we're very excited to be able to undertake this work with you. If we can go to the next slide, please. This QR code will bring you to the pages on our website where you can access all of this information. We hope to feature your information on this website as well. Thank you to those who have already sent us your photos, your event information, the stories from survivors are heartbreaking and inspiring. The stories from your staff who are working to assist survivors are equally heartbreaking and equally inspiring. So we love to tell those stories in that safe space where their voices can be heard and they aren't suffering from any retaliation as a result of sharing that story. So please do reach out if we can assist you in any way. This does conclude our presentation. We're happy to take any questions or any feedback, any ideas that you might have. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Amy, Peggy, Councilmember Ellis, and DC. Are there any questions or comments? Mayor Weiss.
So there is when I see this, there's an organization in the Southwest Valley called the Southwest Family Advocacy Center.
Mhm.
And it does incredible work. And it's a consortium of 5 jurisdictions, including the county. And they deal with not only domestic violence issues, but also sexual abuse, anywhere from small children to adults. And I will tell you that every year they host a fundraiser. And the stories of strength and survival that come out of that event are incredibly inspiring. And when you hear those stories, you realize the worst of humanity. And then you see all these people in the room fighting in the same direction for the same cause. And you see the best in humanity. So thank you very much for bringing this forward. I think it's an incredible event. I'm glad that MAG has been a part of this for over 2 decades. So, Ed, I really appreciate you guys doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss. Additional comments or questions? Seeing none online. Okay, so prior to us voting, there is also opportunity for the public to comment, but I see no cards or requests from that, neither written comments submitted for this. Is that so? With that, is there a motion to approve agenda item number 6? So moved by Mayor Wires, second by Mayor Peterson. Very good. Again, those of you who are online, please turn on your cameras, unmute your audio, leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. And
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for one double check, Mayor Rodriguez, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Very good. Thank you all for your continued support of this. We're now going to gather in the center for photos. Are people with cool shoes in front?
Oh, okay, I'm short and hello, look at you. Right? And they're comfortable. They're comfortable. What brand are they? I want every other. I want version like sparkly ones, red, black and white sparkly ones.
You know what? Go ahead. Like it's not me. Perfect. All right. One, two, three. Perfect and purple. Perfect and purple, yes. Well, we're all kind of married. One more. All right, one, two, three.
Just look good.
It's all Photoshop.
Put their eyes on.
And one last one. You guys are done.
I know. My husband says every headshot I get, I go younger. That's what he says. I show him the headshot and he's like. Okay.
Yes.
I like it. Okay, good. This is good.
Can I take that? Are you done?
You gentlemen.
Thank you, Regional Council. We're being so photogenic this morning. Next on our agenda is item number 7, First Things First, Impact on the Region. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion and will be presented by First Things First CEO Melinda Gulick. Ed, would you like to introduce this first item?
Thank you, Chair Hartke. I'd be happy to. So one of the functions of MAG is to convene regional policymakers. A couple of months ago, you convened and heard a presentation from Read On Arizona. As a result, several of you I've understood, have joined your community into Read On Arizona. Mayor Weiss asked, as a former chair, he asked if we would bring forward something similar to talk about First Things First, which is here today. So we're joined by Melissa Gulick, CEO. She'll provide an overview of the work underway. First Things First was established in 2006 through a citizens initiative, Proposition 203, to fund quality early childhood development and health programs for children aged birth to 5. It's Arizona's only public funding source dedicated exclusively to early childhood. Melinda has served as the CEO of First Things First since 2022 and has been a longstanding advocate on education and early childhood development. She has a background in strategic planning, fundraising, and communications for nonprofits, including working in the very widely known Southwest Human Development, where her passion for kids began. And with that, Melinda, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zerker and Chairman Harkey and mayors. I'm delighted to be with you today. I am Melinda Gulick, as Mr. Zerker said, and the CEO of First Things First. And I am, oh, it worked. Okay, perfect. We're delighted to be here today and share with you the connection between quality early childhood education and the workforce and how it impacts Maricopa County as a whole. As you can see, even Arizona's most conservative business lobbying organization recognizes the need for and the connection to quality childcare and workforce development. First Things First, as Mr. Zerker said, was created by voters in 2006. You might remember the Citizens Initiative that was championed by Nadine and Eddie Basha. It was created in 2006. We are funded by the tobacco tax. We receive about 40% of the state's revenue in tobacco tax for programs focused solely on children birth to 5 statewide. We allocate our funds geographically. We're divided into 28 regions throughout the state. There are 6 in Maricopa County alone. The money is allocated straight by population and also with an emphasis on children who are living in poverty and vulnerable populations. It's a really nice connection today between the historic or the naming of October as Domestic Violence Month and our focus on the well-being of children and their families throughout Arizona. Quality early education is our top priority. And the reason for that is that 90% of brain development happens in the first 5 years of life. It is so critical for today's children who will be our workforce of tomorrow to show up for kindergarten ready to learn. And those executive function skills start developing at birth. If you think about showing up for kindergarten, being ready to share, being ready to raise your hand or wait your turn, be able to identify your colors, get along with your neighbors, all of those are critical skills that you're dealing with in your municipalities every single day. And those skills begin to develop at birth. And when you show up ready for kindergarten, you have higher 3rd grade reading scores, higher 8th grade scores in math, more chance of graduating from high school, and significantly higher post-secondary attainment. All things that are important to Arizona and our economy. Early learning is also a smart investment. We have lots of studies that show even at a minimum, it's an 8-to-1 return on investment. And at its highest, it's a 16-to-1 return on investment. We have increased, as I said, high school graduation and post-secondary attainment, but in particular also decreased special education, less grade retention, less dependence on social welfare, and less crime-related costs and interactions with juvenile justice. Arizona's working families are in need, desperate need of childcare. 60% of young children in Arizona live in a home where all adults work, and there are approximately almost 500,000 working parents with children under 6 throughout Arizona. So what does childcare look like in Arizona, and what does it look like in Maricopa County? You likely know this if you have been in the business of childcare for your own children or your grandchildren recently. There is a gap. There is not enough space in childcare for the number of children who need a space today. And in Maricopa County alone, surprisingly, the gap exists just like here, just like it does throughout the state. There's 19% more children who need a space in childcare than there are spaces available. This is notwithstanding the quality of the child care program, which is First Things First focus. What's the challenge? It's multifaceted. So childcare is it's a market-based system, but it is a very challenging business model. The importance to the number of children per adult in a classroom is indicative of the quality of the program. So you can't just add more children to a classroom or charge families more. The average wage of early childhood educators is $14 an hour. We've seen less than that. These employees also probably don't have benefits. They probably don't have paid time off. They do not have paid professional development. And so it's really challenging to retain that workforce. And as I said earlier, families just simply cannot afford to pay more. Many families participating in childcare or engaging in childcare pay between 12 to 32% of their gross income in childcare costs, and it's considered affordable if it's about 7% of their gross income. What's the economic case? How is this impacting our economy? Childcare challenges in Arizona cause a loss of almost $5 billion annually to Arizona's economy. And we know how important that would be considering the state's budget situation now. And if we could get our workforce of today working with quality childcare and our workforce of tomorrow, the children who are participating in early childhood education programs today, ready, we would have a sustainable economy moving forward. You can see the figures here. It's about $1 billion that Arizona employers lose due to childcare issues. That's due to people leaving a job as a result of childcare challenges, missing work, having to rearrange their schedule, not accept a promotion, or reduce their hours as an employee. It is a very challenging situation. Families lose almost $3 billion in Arizona due to foregone wages, job search costs, absences, no paid time off, things like that. If we could stimulate our economy by adding $3 billion to households in Arizona, think of that, what that would do for Arizona's amazing growing, fastest growing economy that we have. Yep. Could you advance the slide for me, please? Thank you so much. So the impact on working families, this isn't a surprise. Costs are increasing, options are decreasing. 35% of people left a job in the past year due to childcare issues. And 82%, as an employer myself, 82%, we see this every day, and you likely do too in your cities and towns, 82% of individuals have missed work due to childcare issues. Let's see. Oh, now it's working again. So through federal relief funds, the state invested $1.3 billion in early childhood throughout the state. The impact on that investment was a 2-to-1 return on investment. It saved families about $1,250 per year, slowing the increase in prices. Importantly, it increased mothers' employment 3%, and more than 3,000 childcare providers throughout the state received stabilization grants to increase wages, not permanently, but through things like retention bonuses, attendance bonuses, recruitment efforts, and things like that. Very important to stabilize the childcare industry. Childcare, as is probably very obvious, needs to be affordable, accessible, reliable, and high quality. And the settings are myriad. Arizona is, the West. We honor what parents choose for their youngest children. It could be a traditional childcare center like we think of. It can be an in-home care provider. There's a licensing category for home-based care. And then an important part of our system is family, friend, and neighbor care providers. And I chose that myself. Lots of parents choose that because they're more comfortable in a home-based setting with a small number of kids. And we need to focus also on those FF family, friend, and neighbor providers to increase access, because we'll never have enough infrastructure for every child in Arizona to be in a traditional childcare center, and parents might not choose that. So the recent state investment, this past year in the state budget, the legislature allocated $12 million in general fund to the Child Care Assistance Program. Child Care Assistance is a program administered by DES, and it is for income eligible families to receive subsidy so that they can go to work, they must be working, and put their child in high quality care. This was the first investment in child care assistance by the state in 15 years. The state eliminated about $84 million in 2008. And they have not replaced those funds. And we will be advocating again in this upcoming legislative session that they continue to increase funding for childcare assistance. The more we can support income eligible families in quality childcare, the more stable childcare providers will be. And therefore, there will be more space for families who are on a private pay basis. Arizona communities, your communities are finding solutions. So we have a partnership with the city of Tempe. Thank you, Mayor Woods, where the city is funding spots for 200 preschoolers across 7 of their public schools. They have city funding. It is a Quality First program. Quality First is the state's quality rating program that's administered by First Things First. We have a really unique program in partnership with the city of Phoenix. During the pandemic, they were having a challenge with recruiting and retaining workers at the airport. And so they, through some of their federal relief funds, decided to start providing scholarships for airport employees for quality childcare. They have decided to continue that program at post-pandemic funding and are also establishing their own childcare center at the airport. And we are very grateful, Mayor Gallego. And we have a really unique partnership with Mayor Weiss's community in Avondale. And I encourage you to go and see it, where between First Things First, the city's Human Services Department, and other partners, there is a full service holistic family resource center where there's a senior center, there's a family resource center. We do early literacy programs there. It's a wonderful example of blending and braiding funding to provide services for children and families. I'm pleased to say that tomorrow morning we will cut the ribbon for our newest Family Resource Center in partnership with the City of Mesa. We have, by the way, partnerships with all of you, and I would love to talk about all of them up here. We are really grateful for the opportunity to share this with you. If you're interested in how other cities throughout the nation are engaging in quality, accessible, affordable childcare solutions, they're often jurisdictional, and they have lots of partners, whether that's the state, an organization like First Things First, the school district, the city, potentially a nonprofit organization. This website has some really good examples of the ways other cities are and towns are approaching a solution to childcare for the quality of life in their community and also their local economy. Again, Mayor Weiss, thank you so much for making the connection and for Mr. Zuercher finding time for us on the agenda. We are delighted to be your partner for all wonderful things, children birth to 5, and it's been a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Melinda. Are there any questions or comments? Mayor Weiss.
Linda, thank you for being here. I think for us, Avondale looked at this not only from the aspect of us being an incredibly young community. Our median age for families is under the age of 34. And we have new families moving to Avondale all the time. And a lot of times you have to have both parents, especially in this economy, to go out and work. And we saw a real need for this. We saw a real need from it just for supplying these kind of scholarships and these kind of benefits to our families, but we also saw it as an economic development issue. And over the years that we've had First Things First with our city, I will tell you some of the impact that they've had. In 2021, the average median household income in the city of Avondale was $69,000. In 2024, that number rose to $90,000, one of the fastest growing median household income increases in the Valley. We also saw our college graduation rate range from 23% in 21 to over 30% in 24. Those successes go to parents and families being able to get higher paying jobs, working longer hours if they need to, but also attending classes in college and getting those degrees that enable them to find better paying jobs. While it's a social issue in the city of Avondale, I will tell you that it's also a huge economic development driver. And I would encourage those cities who don't have First Things First as part of their program or not active in it. I think you need to look at it from both ways and see, does this fit for our city? And for Avondale, it's been an incredible success. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much. I should have also said we do also partner with employers to help them develop solutions. And yesterday we met with Mayor Harkey's largest employer, Intel, their private partners solving childcare. And so there's there's all sorts of ways that you can solve this in your community, all sorts of levers to pull. It is a challenge, and we know that childcare is the largest barrier for women and men in post-secondary attainment. It is also a huge barrier for employment. And so all of those pieces fit together to grow your median income, to grow the quality of your life and the economic stability of your community. And so if we can solve this one, we've at least started the chain in the right direction.
I was just wondering how you address, like, my son's a firefighter and he's a single dad with 3 little girls and 24-hour shifts. Is that something that there's being under consideration?
So we have started our conversations with firefighters and police. We have a great relationship with, like, for example, the Building and Trades Council in Arizona, and also healthcare, because it's not just the center-based, home-based, family, friend, and neighbor. It is also the alternative hours. And in many of your local economies, the businesses driving your local economy are things like healthcare, where your shift might go from 6 to 6, or a 24-hour shift in the case of a firefighter or a police officer with, the night shift. And so having a safe place where you feel comfortable that your children are safe and well cared for so that you can show up ready to do your job is absolutely key. And that's a piece that we want to address on a statewide level, but also a municipal by municipal level as well. So our focus with childcare assistance is really for income eligible families, but there's other considerations, whether you might not meet the income requirements, but we'd really like to bolster the system for 24-hour care, weekend care. This is incredibly important for the service industry as well, our tourism industry. So thank you for raising that, and good luck to your son. Single parenting is is a challenge. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Seeing no additional comments, any questions or comments from online? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And for the interest of time, and because item number 8 is not critical information to us, we're going to move that to next month. So item number 9 is an overview of regional programs. This is on the agenda for information and discussion. It's going to be presented by Patrick Stone, Deputy Transportation Director, and Shu Yao Yang, Data Application Program Manager.
Thank you, Chair Harkey, members of Regional Council. Pleasure to be here today along with my colleague Shu Yao Hong to present this item on overview of regional programs. As you've heard before, we've done a deep dive. We've had discussions on Prop 479. So we're going to go a little further down the rabbit hole today with a conversation about the regional programs. Hopefully this map is very familiar to everyone in the room. It's a great illustration of all the regional investments associated with Prop 479. These are those discrete project level investments where Regional Council came together and approved the plan back in 2021. But we want to take and do a little different dive on the information today. The Sankey diagram you have seen, I do love this diagram. It's very interesting to look at. You see the revenues on the left, the expenditures on the right. And today we're going to focus on a very core component of this portfolio. If you look at the lower right-hand corner, these are the regional programs and arterial investments. We've grayed out the arterial investments, but what we really wanted to talk about today are those regional programs that were associated with the Regional Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Investment Plan, or the RSTIP. So why do we have these programs within the investment plan? There's really 3 core components here. I would argue they're somewhat related, but it's one thing we get out of this, it's flexibility. You'll see in a slide, which cracks me up in a minute, preview of a coming slide. It's a hilarious slide, but there's a lot of flexibility associated with programs. They allow you to respond to an upcoming and ever-changing future. I think I like the concept of opportunity. it allows member agencies to put forth those programs or those investments and projects important to your communities. We have a myriad of programs available, and it allows you to kind of tailor your needs to those programs. And it's very responsive. One thing with having these programmatic investments is we say we don't know what the future looks like. So it gives us an opportunity to pivot when needed. So for those of you who remember 2003, this was the height of technology. You are looking at the left with a slick Motorola Razr phone, the infamous Windows XP, and a stunning silver 2003 Ford Taurus. That's what we were working at with. That's what the region was using. That was the future we had. That was what we envisioned in 2003 when we put together the regional transportation plan. There were not programmatic investments associated with that plan back in 2003. But as you see on the slide, I make a liar of myself. I'm like, oh, there weren't investments in the 2003 RTP, but there are investments associated with Prop 400. There was funding that came out after that plan was accepted. You see investments in bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, air quality, roadway safety, ITS. So we had somewhat of a history of programmatic investments. As you can see on the right, significant increase. We have a myriad of programs, air quality, travel demand, ITS, safety, 2 new programs for arterial road rehabilitation and widening. So we've kind of pivoted off of that, just a purely project level programming, to something a little more nimble and robust. Hopefully you remember this slide. This is an excerpt of one slide where you see where we show the regional competitive programs highlighted on the screen. I think it's kind of interesting. The slide has 2 components to it that I think are good. The second column talks about the funding source. MAG did a study back in 2020. I think a lot of your member agencies, your staff can attest to this. When you use federal funds to deliver a project, it costs more. Full stop, it just does, at least 20%. You as elected officials, MAG developing this plan, were very cognizant of that and took the opportunity to say, we can do better. We can think more strategically of our resources and how we allocate them. And so you see a lot of these competitive programs here actually have sales tax funding, which allows us to be delivering those investments cheaper and quicker to your residents. I will note, we show the investments for 20 years, both a total, total per year and the total amount. What you're really looking at there is what the summation of that is. Obviously, as we bring these programs online, you'll see some flexibility and variability, but we'll eventually hit those goals. And so pause here. We're going to have a little deeper dive while Xu Yao is up here with me. He's going to tell you an amazing story specific to ITS. So we see we have an annual investment, $30 million, $600 million over the life of the investment plan. But we have a case study, $60,000 can bring $1 million back. So with that, I'll pause it here. I'll let you do the next click. Thanks, sir.
Chair Harkey and members of Regional Council, as Patrick mentioned, we will use emergency vehicle preemption as an example of what an ITS project might look like under the 479 programs. And we chose this example because it improved both safety and mobility, while also touching on the regional coordination elements, a key focus of MAG. I will start with what is EVP and why it's important. The current technology is being used in the field in this region, and there's a new emerging technology that could improve EVP in a cost-effective manner. And we're working with City of Tempe on pilot projects to evaluate those claims and what we have found out so far and some of those benefits, how that might be translated to a regional scale project. First of all, emergency vehicle preemption, or EVP, a different EV here, is an ITS technology that interrupts a normal traffic signal timing plan to provide or extend green lights for emergency vehicle approaching an intersection responding to a call, while providing red lights for all the conflicting approaches. It helps emergency vehicle to get through an intersection safely and quickly. It has both safety and mobility benefits. First and foremost, it helps reduce response time when every second matters. Secondly, it is much safer for emergency vehicle to enter an intersection when it has the green lights, reducing the risk of collision with other road users, other vehicles, pedestrians, or cyclists at the crossing. Lastly, emergency response inevitably will cause disruptions to traffic flows to other road users. However, the sooner we can get them off the green network safely, less impacts it will cause to all other road users, and overall it helps save lives and reduce the overall societal costs. Many agencies in this region using an optical-based EVP solution. Conceptually, it's very simple. Think of that as your infrared remote control for your TV. You will have emitter installed in fire trucks or ambulance. You have a receiver installed for each approach at intersections. When the emergency vehicle, fire truck, or ambulance approaching intersections, you will beam a coded infrared lights to the intersections, letting it know it is coming. And that information will be passed on to the traffic signal controller, which based on the city's policy and setting at the intersections, it will compute what will be the right time to do the timing change for the fire trucks. It is a time-proven technology first developed by 3M in the 70s. Few decades later, it works, first of all, and it's better than having nothing. However, there are many drawbacks that is becoming harder to ignore associated with the optical-based EVP. First of all, it's a hardware-dependent solution, meaning that you need to purchase hardware, install it for all the vehicles, for all intersections. They also need to maintain that for the life cycle of those equipments. And second thing here is what we heard common from member agencies, that it's sometimes very hard to know when the optical-based EVP is not working properly, because there are multiple components typically managed by different city departments that could go wrong. And there's no easy way to diagnose it when that didn't work, unless you bring a fire truck out of the service to do a test run through your corridor, through intersections to figure that out. Secondly, because it's an infrared-based communications, it's subject to limited range, line of sight requirements. It's also subject to weather and temperature influences as well. On the other hand, there are also illegal, unauthorized emitter out there in the black market trying to abuse and take advantage of EVP by getting themselves green lights at intersections. The vendors and manufacturers of EVP systems are catching up by coming up with new coding patterns, trying to only allow permitted vehicles to get a preemption. However, that introduces another potential issue about compatibility. Many of you know that this region has a mutual aid agreement between agencies and also centralized dispatch. That means when there's variation of hardware, coding patterns, configurations used by different agencies in the region, a fire truck sometimes may end up in a different cities and town that is using an incompatible EVP. So when they request EVP, they won't get that at those intersections. So there's a new emerging technologies out there last few years trying to improve that. It has many different names and variations, slightly differently. It can be called GPS-based, a cloud-based, or central-based EVP, but the concept is simple. Many emergency vehicles are already reporting their real-time location through something called Automatic Vehicle Location Module, AVL module. It's mainly for dispatch and fleet management purposes. On the infrastructure side, many cities and towns already have communications with the signal they operate through fiber or wireless communications, and that is mainly used for traffic signal status monitoring and signal timing plan update purpose. But that did provide a conduit for city to issue preemption command from their traffic management center to those intersections as well. And putting these two pieces together, these technologies will simply monitor all the real-time locations of fire trucks and ambulance, and then when it is approaching an intersection from a particular directions, it can prompt the city's traffic management center to issue a preemption command to those intersections. Obviously, that allows you to do it much more advanced, no longer subject to line of sight requirements, but also if you can integrate with the dispatch information, knowing where the fire truck is going, you can actually preempt a couple of intersections down the road based on the predicted route that the fire truck is going to take or ambulance is going to take. Obviously, the GPS-based EVP has a couple of advantages addressing the challenges we had with the optical-based EVP. First of all, again, it's a software-based solution. You no longer need to maintain and purchase those hardware and also over the life cycle of those devices. No longer subject to the range limits and line of sight requirements as well. And I think most importantly, as a data integration technologies, it's much easier to integrate with different AVL sources from different fire departments, and also integrate with a different traffic signal management system by different cities, making this type of technology much easier to scale to a larger project involving multiple agencies. And to evaluate all these claims, we are currently working with City of Tempe and Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department on a pilot project involving 70 intersections, as shown on the map here. We have 7 emergency response vehicles in this pilot project. They were equipped with a special transponder from a company called Hus Alerts. I know moments ago I mentioned no hardware needed. The reason why we use this transponder here is it has a capability to send out alerts to other road users about upcoming emergency vehicle and upcoming emergency SIMs. And so that's a secondary objective we want to try in these pilot projects. I think later we learn City of Phoenix actually are also adopting this transponder as well. And for the GPS-based EVP, we're using a vendor called Light, one of a handful of providers that can provide such solutions. And we are in the first part of a 12-month pilot projects as we gather more data points for evaluations. However, we do see some promising results already in the first few months of these projects. First of all, the first thing we do when we see a pilot project is if it works or not, right? Sometimes things work on paper, but not necessarily in the real world. And this time we know it works. As of last month, the technology has issued about 200 preemption commands triggered by these piloting technologies. And we also see about over 7,000 alerts sent out to other road users about upcoming emergency vehicle, upcoming emergency scene, mainly through the Waze navigation apps, but also select vehicles infotainment systems. More importantly, from our pilot projects, we have seen a 10% reduction in travel time for emergency vehicle going through intersections compared to the optical system that was in place in those intersections. Cost-wise, we see a 20 times, not 20%, 20 times reduction in the initial setup cost per intersection. And this is no longer accounting for the vehicle-based cost that the optical-based system will require. And for a completed project that vendor Light did in California, they see a 42 seconds reduction in code-free instant travel times, door-to-door travel time for those instances that require lights and sirens on. And when every seconds matter, a 42-second reduction could be a difference between life and death, a tear down and rebuild versus a repair. With that, I will just circle back to the flip phone example that Patrick mentioned earlier. If we were asked 20 years ago, hypothetically, what would be the EVPD technology that we will be nailed down for the POC 400 back then, we probably will say optical-based is the solution to go because that was the only one available in the market. And then we will be locked into that for the 20 years of a span of a plan. I think this example further emphasizes that the flexibility of the programmatic area on the 400 will provide a great benefits for the region when we can adopt to technology, new things that might be coming up over a span of the plan. With that, I will just turn you over to Patrick to close it out.
Thank you, Xu Yao. Very good presentation. So just kind of reiterating and kind of going back to the slide, just bring it all back. You can again see the competitive programs that we have associated with the investment plan. And I kind of like this, just some examples of technologies we're already seeing deployed in the region, but different things like rapid rectangular flashing beacons. But we have different safety and communication improvements associated with the plan that are already providing real world investments and improvements. And with that, Mr. Chair and members of the Regional Council, pleasure to give the presentation. Xu Yao and I are available.
And Mr. Chair, I just add to that. I think this illustrates the wisdom that the Regional Council had in holding firm to these. If some of you remember, I think I was in a couple meetings with Mayor Weiss where there was a very aggressive pushback on the region for having this. It was called, I'm going to just say this one time because I don't like repeating the negative. It was accused of being slush funds, when in fact what they were very strategic investments in specific areas for future flexibility and responsiveness. And so the fact that you held firm on that, I think is going to really pay dividends in the next year, 5 years, 10, 15, 20 years. So we shouldn't overlook that because I know each of you probably had to deal with those sorts of comments and pushbacks, but you held firm, you held this in there. And so what this means though, is that in the future, you're going to have a lot of items on your agenda coming up where you're awarding these funds to member agencies to do these projects like Tempe is doing with the preemption system. So there's going to be more activity coming before the Regional Council to take advantage of these funds on these broad regional solutions where we couldn't just predict as specifically as possible in the moment. You left yourself flexibility to respond to the future. So just wanted to end with that.
Well, thank you, Patrick and Xu Yao, and thank you for bringing that up and for the Regional Council really standing on that. I know that was a big issue for us, and to make sure that we could take into account that which we don't know and to plan for the future. Members, any questions or comments? Mayor Gallego.
Thank you. Thank you for the great presentation. Maricopa County was very lucky to win a federal grant from the Infrastructure Jobs Act for advanced signals. I think we'll be using it for some different safety related objectives. And then we in Phoenix are looking at bus rapid transit and doing signal preemption with that. Have other regions got them all to work together? Or would we be on the leading edge of trying this?
You take that, or you want me to take that? I tried so hard. Mayor Geigo, Chair Harkey, members of the Regional Council, I think that's part of the development, kind of to Ed's point. As we start rolling out these programs, especially in the emerging tech and ITS spaces, that's part of what our next steps are, is to develop those plans and go out and look at what peer agencies are doing and try and find those best practices. Obviously, where we can, we want to lead the charge, but if we can stand on the shoulders of others, we will certainly do that.
Wonderful. We are looking at using some advanced signaling to try to address our challenge with red light running, but we would also want to make sure emergency vehicles can get there. We have had some really terrible accidents with our emergency vehicles going through intersections, and we're so grateful for you to making them safer. And then we do hope this will integrate with some of our transit products as well. So you're gonna have to save the whole world with these signals.
Thank you.
And then a related question, how long does it take to return to status quo if an emergency vehicle disrupts the flow of the signals?
Chair Harkey, members of Regional Council and the Mayor, that kind of depending on each agency's settings and also individual intersection settings. In the optical-based system, what I heard so far is anywhere from a couple of minutes to even to 30 minutes, because sometimes the entire corridor is coordinated, and when you disrupt only some of those signals, it takes a while for them to go back. Yeah.
And I hope it would, if there is more advanced technology in addition to this, I would think it could be able to recover more quickly.
Yes, indeed. And I think the other benefits of the giving intersection much more advanced is that giving them in more leeway to do those adjustments in the minor increments than not just drastic changes like the optical-based system. So that helps to clear out the block traffic, but also clear out pedestrian cyclists who may be crossing the intersection as well. So that's all the benefits of giving intersections more advanced of arrival of emergency vehicle.
Thank you.
All right. Boy, Mayor Weiss, you are speaking on every item. The floor is yours.
I am a short timer. I'm making sure I get all my words in. So, wow. No, government's at its best when it's proactive and not reactive. And when I look at what you're talking about in the presentation today, which was incredible, it's proactive. But I will tell you, I think there is an opportunity for MAG to not only rely on what other regions do, but you have technology-based companies that are in the Valley. There is a company in Mesa called Versaterm that is a large international public safety software and hardware company that deals with 911 centers and software and things along that line. They are acquiring different companies. It may be interesting to kind of reach out to a company like that and say, okay, what do you see the future of these technologies happening? And what's happening on an international level? Because I think sometimes we look at it just from the United States, more of a myopic level. Looking internationally to see what's working overseas, I think probably makes sense. And having a company in our backyard that may be able to help with those discussions probably makes sense.
Additional questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you so much. Item number 10 is an air quality update. This is available for information and discussion. Will be presented by Matt Poppin, Environmental Director. Matt.
Thank you, Chair Harkey and members of the Regional Council. I'm going to go through these slides as quickly as I can to give you guys a chance for questions and comments that you might have. Just a reminder, with our 2015 ozone standard, EPA did set this standard back in 2015, and the level is 70 parts per billion. Our current level based on 2021 through 2023 data is 80 parts per billion. So we're 10 parts per billion over that standard, which is quite a big delta. If we were to remove wildfires, we think we would be at 76 parts per billion. And just as a reminder, ozone is a secondary pollutant. So the way to control ozone is to control the emissions of VOC and nitrogen oxides, those two pollutants that come together in the presence of sunlight to form ozone. So our control strategies are focused on limiting emissions from those two sources. I want to get you up to date on where we are with the ozone timeline, because this kind of puts us in context of the work that we're trying to do. So back in November 2017, we had EPA issue this finding of failure to submit. which means that we're currently under sanctions clocks. If we don't submit a moderate area plan by May 17th, 2025, the region will be subject to initial sanctions. Oh, I'm sorry, should be sequential here. One of the other dates that we just recently hit was our moderate area attainment date. That was August 3rd, 2024. We were supposed to meet the ozone standard by that date. And obviously the prior slide showed that we did not. So because of that, EPA will at some point be reclassifying the region from moderate to serious. The Clean Air Act gives EPA up to 6 months to do that from that moderate area attainment date. So anywhere between now and February 3rd, 2025, EPA will be reclassifying the region from moderate to serious. We expect EPA to probably do this in the fall or early winter of next year. Again, the first sanctions clock would hit May 17th, 2025. These are 2-to-1 offsets. So if you're a major industry in the valley, you have to offset your emissions by double if you want to do any new expansion, or if you're coming into the area as a new business. So obviously we want to avoid these sanctions from occurring. The second sanction is highway funding, federal highway funds. If a plan is not submitted by November of 17th, 2025, EPA can withhold federal highway funds. EPA has indicated there's a way for us to turn off these sanctions clocks. And I'll be talking about that a little bit later. The other thing I want to mention is because we're going to be reclassified to serious, we'll have to submit a new plan, what we call a serious area plan. And a due date for that plan will be January 1st, 2026. The attainment date for a serious area is August 3rd, 2027. That's going to be based on air quality data from 2024 through 2026. So we really have 3 parallel efforts that we're doing at the same time to address all these requirements that are embedded in this timeline. So the first, number one, and our highest priority is to submit a plan to turn off these moderate area sanctions clocks. So we're currently working with ADEQ, Maricopa County, and Pinal County to assemble the required elements. That plan will come before the Regional Council in April at the latest for your approval and your adoption. Once that plan is submitted up to EPA, all they have to do to turn off the sanctions clock is find that plan complete. So the EPA has to say all of the required elements were in that plan. We find it complete, and that terminates the sanctions clock. We're highly confident we can put together a plan that will meet these requirements and turn off the sanctions clocks. So while we're doing that, we're also developing a new serious area plan. One of the first things we've done is developed emissions to see what our emissions look like in the future of those pollutants that cause ozone. You can see we're still making great progress over time. We started out with emissions of nitrogen oxides, for example, of 147.5 tons per day in 2017. We anticipate emissions to be almost cut in half at 78.5 tons by 2026. So the region is still making great progress in reducing man-made emissions. Our next step will be to take these emissions, do photochemical modeling of it. That will tell us how much additional reductions are needed to meet the ozone standard and how close we are to meeting the ozone standard with these reductions.
And so here, this just illustrates kind of our conundrum and frustration, which is the efforts to cut pollution are working, but the ozone is not reducing to the level that is required. So that's where we're stuck a bit. The other thing is, I would just say, this took me a long time to figure out. It feels like moderate, serious, severe is about how much over the standard you are, but that's not, in fact, not the case. This is a time-based standard. So if we're at 71 or 101, it's practically speaking the same issue. You don't get points for being close. You only get points for meeting that 70 standard. So it's about the length of time to get to 70. It's not how much over 70 you are. So that's another sort of dilemma we have, which is we want to keep driving it down, but if we can't get to 70, it leaves us still in a box. So anyway.
And that's a great segue to our third parallel effort, which is addressing these regional challenges that Mr. Zuercher has laid out. One of those is continued request and pleading with EPA to develop new science to explain that issue of why ozone concentrations are not responding to local emission reductions. So one additional effort that has we're happy to talk about is we've met with other metropolitan planning organizations throughout the Intermountain West. So this is Salt Lake City, Denver, Colorado Springs, Las Vegas. They have all come together to write a letter to Assistant Administrator Joe Goffman asking for science that would explain the situation for EPA to act quickly and to provide us with new information so that we can put together plans that can hopefully reduce ozone and meet the standard. Additionally, there's some local research proposals that are being formulated currently in conjunction with some researchers at ASU, U of A, to try and develop and study our local ozone problems here locally. Hopefully that can be funded. There's not a funding source identified yet, but hopefully that can be funded and take place in this upcoming ozone season in 2025, so we can have some new data to see how ozone responds. Okay, I'm going to make a big shift here to particulate matter. If you have questions on ozone, feel free to bring them up as we close here. Again, just a reminder, EPA set a new PM 2.5 standard. This is fine particulates back in February of this year. That existing standard was strengthened quite a bit from 12 micrograms down to 9. The main sources of PM 2.5 in the MAG region are combustion activities, residential wood burning. We've talked about that quite a bit, fireworks, and then also any activity that disturbs the soil, driving on unpaved roads, agricultural activities. All of those contribute to PM 2.5 in our region. And again, in the wintertime and during the holidays, residential wood burning is really the primary source of PM 2.5 in our region. So the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality proposed new draft boundaries for Maricopa and Pinal County, and they just released these on Monday. Comments are due on these. So these are official now. So comments are due on these new boundaries to ADEQ by October 24th. So currently there are 3 monitors in Maricopa County and 1 monitor in Pinal County that exceed the new EPA standard. Here are the 3 monitors again in Maricopa County. These are all located in the Southwest, Central Southwest, Durango Complex, South Phoenix, West Phoenix, and there's 1 monitor in Hidden Valley. And just a reminder, the standard is 9 for comparison against those numbers. So here's the new map. This is what ADEQ has proposed for the new boundary for Maricopa County. It has been expanded somewhat from what they informally proposed a few months ago, mainly expanded to the southeast. You can see the 3 violating monitors are those red dots. The monitors in blue are monitors that are currently meeting the standard. Their values are less than 9 on an annual basis. Here's the proposed non-attainment area boundary for Pinal County. Pinal County is in an interesting situation. There is one thing I just want to mention about the Hidden Valley monitor. That monitor is really representative of a particular source category. It's not really representative of an entire area. And so what Pinal County has requested in their monitoring data and ADEQ has reflected in their document is that if EPA determines that this monitor is not comparable to the standard, then they're not going to propose any non-attainment area boundary for Pinal County. That happened back in 2012 when EPA initially came out with the annual standard. This monitor was called Cowtown at that time. And EPA said that monitor is not reflective of what the general population would be exposed to, but more reflective of feedlots that were right around that monitor. So we would be supportive of that if EPA proposed to say, hey, this monitor is not really one you need to compare for the annual standard. And my last slide here is a timeline. So ADEQ must get these recommendations up to the governor by January 7th. Then the governor will submit these recommendations to EPA by February 7th. Also, if any tribal or native nation has any recommendations, they have to submit that as well to EPA by February 7th. EPA is going to make their determination by February 7th of 2026. And ultimately, it'll be EPA's decision on what the boundary will be. If EPA comes out with a boundary that's different from what ADEQ proposes, there is an opportunity. There's what's known as a 120-day letter process, where you're given 120 days to respond to EPA and say whether or not you agree with EPA's boundaries. So I'm available for any questions that you might have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, any questions? Mayor Orsborn.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions starting with specifically the standard, I think, was lowered in 2015 for ozone. What was it before, and what did it get? We lowered it, I think, I understand, to the 70, but what was it previous?
Previously, it was the 2008 standard, and it was 75.
75. Okay. So either way, we're not making that standard at this time.
Right. We were able to demonstrate attainment with that standard back in 2015. And we think, as the slide said, if you're to take out wildfires, we'd probably be pretty close to it, to that
Okay.
75. Yeah.
And the transient ozone, I think what we're arguing is that that's the significant ozone that we see in this area. I think, and every time we talk about this issue, we bring this up just so that we can take a deep breath and understand this isn't all caused by us in the valley. What is, and it's not caused by Buckeye either. What is the, I think I've heard figures of if we could remove every car off the road in Metro Phoenix and still not meet the attainment. Is that what our estimates show?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Orsborn and Chairman Harkey. So what we have modeled is that 80% of the ozone is from either natural sources or international emissions or interstate emissions. So sources outside of our control. That leaves 20% of the ozone being generated from sources within our control. I don't have specific numbers for you on if we were to eliminate all cars, but you're right. We need what our modeling has shown, and this is hopefully what we'll find out when we do this new photochemical modeling for 2026. When we did it back in 2023, we needed to reduce those local emissions by 50% to reach attainment. So whatever of that 20%, we had to cut that in half, which would be a drastic emission. So if you did look at things like light duty vehicles, which are very low emitting now, you know, the emissions from a regular gasoline light duty vehicle are often less than opening a can of paint now over a year. So eliminating light duty vehicles isn't going to get you there. So we'll look again and see what the modeling tells us, but the modeling will most likely say we'll need additional significant reductions to get there. You know, maybe not 50%, but maybe 30. And that is a major hurdle. And it will be very difficult to come up with measures that could conceivably do that.
Okay. And there was a significant amount of those contributors that on one of those slides you had showed we were going to decrease by almost 50%. What is that exactly, and where do I mean that seems like a massive amount of emissions that we're doing away with in a very short period of time, and that's like magic. So can you explain that?
Sure, I understand that. So almost all of the reductions that are being shown here, and these are with existing measures, so there's no new measures baked into that 2026 idea. That is mainly the result of fleet turnover. So as older vehicles are retired and newer vehicles are brought into the fleet, you have significant reduction in nitrogen oxide emissions, and that's even with our population growth. So even though that feels counterintuitive, there's more people driving, we drive longer. Those reductions are real. These are reductions from EPA's own models. We have to use EPA's model to estimate emissions from motor vehicles. And so that's where we're primarily getting those reductions, is from fleet turnover and the assumption of cleaner vehicles in the future.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then on last couple questions, PM 2.5, EPA adjusted that from 12 to 9. What's the reasoning behind that?
So theoretically, EPA's reasoning is all health-based. So I'm not an epidemiologist, but these are epidemiological studies that said vulnerable populations can be affected by concentrations that are 9 or above. So they felt like the administrator felt there was significant evidence from a health-based standard to set the standard at 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I noticed on the boundary, I don't want to call attention necessarily to who's not included in that boundary, but what does that mean for areas outside of that blue boundary that's drawn there?
Right. So a couple things. So once the non-attainment area has been established, we'll be required to submit a plan saying, hey, how are you going to meet this new standard? And so we'll have to develop controls to reduce the sources of emissions within that boundary to moving forward to meet that standard. So if residential wood burning is the primary culprit, residential wood burning sources within that area, you would expect to see new controls on residential wood burning. If there are new, if another source, unpaved roads or paved roads or whatever the source might be, you would expect that control measures would be developed to try and reduce emissions for those sources. Now, what's interesting, because this is smaller than the Maricopa County border, Maricopa County is going to be primarily the ones who would develop rules and these new control measures. They can choose to apply the rule to the county as a whole, or they can choose to limit it to the non-attainment area. In the past, they've chosen to make their rules applicable countywide, even though it's maybe targeted on a non-attainment area. So you could see those control measures applied to the county as a whole, or they could be just applied to the non-attainment area. And then again, the other major impact would be any new business, any new major industry that were to move into this non-attainment area. They'd have to keep their PM 2.5 emissions below a certain level, or they would have to come up with offsets if they were above a certain level, which is 70 tons per year for PM 2.5.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation and the thorough answers. And Chair, I'll yield back my time to Mayor Weiss, who I'm sure wants to ask questions about this one as well.
You have no time left to yield.
Thank you. All right. Thanks.
Mayor Peterson.
So edgy today.
On every issue though. Matt, thank you for the presentation. Great job. My question is about the sanctions clock. You mentioned the sanctions clock, and if that is stopped, how long does it get stopped for? What are the issues that will surround that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Peterson, Chair Harkey. My understanding is that once EPA finds the plan complete, that will terminate the sanctions clock, and they don't have any other remedy to turn it back on. So once they do that, those should be turned off. Now, I will say that ultimately, EPA has to approve that plan that we submit. So they usually drag their feet, to be honest with you, on doing approvals. But if they were to look at that plan and then say, actually, we disapprove this plan or a portion of this plan, that would trigger a new round of sanctions clock. It wouldn't be retroactive. It would start again, and normally 18 months from that point to correct any deficiency that EPA identifies in the plan.
Okay. Mayor Pizzillo.
Would there be additional regulations on businesses within the non-attainment area?
Yes,
be?
there very well could be. It could be business focused, but again, if our data primarily shows it's residential wood burning in the winter, that really, I think, is one area that needs to be addressed. So those measures, again, the plan will ultimately come before the council for decision and adoption. So there'll be lots of discussion about what measures will be included in that plan.
Okay. So Matt, I also got a question. This map is a bit different than the previous one, yet the sensors are still only the 3 in a really constrained area. So what's the rationale in the change there on this one? Again, I'm not just speaking as the mayor of Chandler, but I am as previously this big chunk on the east was not in there. So how? I didn't understand the previous one where we had a constricted, unattained or violations. Yet, explain this to us.
Right. Thank you, Mayor Harkey. So in my review of the ADEQ documentation, it appears that the primary reason for expanding this boundary is they did additional meteorological analysis. And the primary thing is something called high split back trajectory. And what you do there is you take, for example, the West Phoenix monitor and you track the wind backwards for 24 hours on a particular day. And you go, where did the source of the pollution come from? So you do all of this for every day that was over 9. And when they did that, they found there were wind patterns that touched on the Southeast Valley that they didn't identify the first time around. So from my reading through the documentation, that appears to be the primary reason why they expanded it to the Southeast Valley, is it does look like there is transport to those monitors from these regions in general. But I will say that is the most difficult thing about drawing this boundary, is figuring out how much is local and how much is transportable. To be honest, it's very hard to do that. And it can be hard to draw that line, because you have to figure out how much is local and how much is transportable. I think the other thing that's happening here is EPA is going to start with Maricopa and Pinal County as their default boundary. That's going to be their default. So I think ADEQ is trying to make a justification for a smaller boundary as well. So I think that's another thing that is occurring as well when they go to submit those recommendations to EPA. So there's a lot of factors at work, but to your specific question, my understanding is it's that new weather tracking that has caused the expansion.
I hear you, but I'm now looking at Surprise. So the weather pattern that included Surprise in this seemed to skip over the monitor in Peoria and affected, and are in the East Valley, the Mesa and Tempe monitors weren't triggered. So I understand the words of the rationale, but it would seem that the Peoria or the Mesa Tempe monitors should have been triggered to include Apache Junction, for example, or others. So it doesn't quite pass the sniff test to me.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Harkey. I will be trying to present a more detailed technical review of this tomorrow at our Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee, so I encourage your staff to attend to that. I think one other issue, and again, just trying to explain what was in the documentation. So when you identify a source like residential wood burning as a source, you want to try and capture the majority of the sources that are producing that, right? Or if you're, and so this boundary largely captures the urban core. It's probably another consideration. So that is probably another thing that's happening with this.
So perhaps more population based rather than air patterns?
Yes, that's probably another factor as well. Land use, where these sources are located. But yeah, I think that really is the critical. So if cities do wish to comment, that period is open through October 24th. So if there are comments, the best thing I can say is make your comments technical, make them have the best technical rationale. If you feel like that's going to be the one that's going to be most reviewed by ADEQ when they review your comments.
Any additional questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Matt. Item number 11.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very quickly, just to review some good things in the region. Loop 303 project of MAG, ADOT, and Phoenix partnered to accelerate 43rd and 51st Avenue interchanges for TSMC and other development in the north is being recognized by the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officers with a potential award so people can log on to the AASHTO site and vote for this, among others, nationwide. Next, the congratulations to President Javier and the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. They received almost $10 million for a Go Green initiative through the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. Next, Maricopa County received $15 million for publicly accessible EV charging stations for those that participate in the Travel Reduction Program. All these are elements that are going to help with our air quality issues. Next, October is also Pedestrian Safety Month, and we've talked quite a bit about safety here. Our MAG staff, Patrick, who you saw earlier, has some resources if your staff want to get on board with National Pedestrian Safety Awareness Month in October, please contact Patrick Stone or Margaret Herrera from our staff. Finally, next, what we've been recognizing throughout the last 6 months or so, cities who are doing informational efforts. We've talked about many of yours cities. This month, we're recognizing Apache Junction and Avondale have both put information on Prop 479 on their websites. I think nearly every city in here, every city in town has done the same. So thank you for that. And finally, there's always a MAG connection, isn't there? Al McCoy, who passed away, the voice of the Sons. Our staff went back in the archives and found that on May 30th of 2002, Al was in this room for a press conference introducing a very forward-thinking technology, video conferencing. His was the first voice heard on the system that was a press conference with Gilbert Mayor Steve Berman, Surprise Mayor Joan Schaefer, Wickenburg Mayor Lon McDermott, and Phoenix City Council member Peggy Bilstein, who left before we could remind her of that 20 years ago. I just kind of in the same pattern as we talked about Patrick's 2003 Razor phone. In the press release from 2002, we had a very we had a quotation from one of our staff saying, "Imagine a meeting with 27 participants and not one of them has to be in the same room." It's possible with the new MAG video conferencing system. So 20 years ago, that was very cutting edge. We see now what has happened. We think very little of a Zoom meeting where you can get 27,000 people in the same meeting without having to be in the same room. So anyway, we do recognize the contributions of Al McCoy and thought you'd find that of interest. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Item number 12, legislative update. Samantha Klakalak.
Just want to introduce Samantha, is our new intergovernmental relations coordinator. Samantha joins us from the Arizona State House of Representatives, where she was a staffer. She did serve time on the Prop 479 debates for the last 2 years. Some of you may have seen her in meetings. We're very happy she's decided to come join MAG. You'll be seeing and hearing more from her in the next, hopefully, years. So welcome, Samantha.
All right. Item 13, requests for future agenda items. Are there any requests for membership for an item on a future agenda? Seeing none.
Nope.
Oh,
In your
seeing
blind
one.
spot. And maybe two. I don't know if Mayor Wires as well, but or he was just
Well,
being
Mayor
thoughtful.
Weiss will, I'm sure. Go ahead.
He'll request a very busy January agenda for us. We had the Transportation Policy Committee last week in a Northeast Valley update. I'd very much wished to be there, but unfortunately we had the funeral services for one of our own Phoenix police officer, Zane Coolidge, killed in a carjacking. One of 12 Phoenix officers shot at already this year. So very, very tough. But one of the things that I had hoped to talk about is we're having a lot of transportation needs in the Northeast Valley of Phoenix, in the area around the Mayo corridor. And I was asking if MAG would conduct a transportation study to better understand and plan for our future roadway and freeway needs.
Just to clarify, that would be the east side, Scottsdale, Pima Freeway side of the 101 in the Mayo Clinic, Mayo Hospital area.
Yeah, around the Mayo, there's some real issues with flood control planes. A mayor who was on the video call has some interest in connectivity with a neighboring city.
Very good.
Additional? No? Okay. Comments from committee. I have one. I do want to extend our appreciation to longtime mayor of Buckeye, Jackie Meck, who recently stepped down from ADOT and therefore will also no longer be serving on this particular board. We wish him well in his future endeavors and his care concerns for family members. So any others? Seeing none, the gavel is waving. Concludes our meeting.